We're going to bring in Mark K. Sargent, and we're going to debate his flat Earth viewpoints. He began looking at flat Earth theory in 2014, released a series of YouTube videos titled Flat Earth Clues, delving into the possibility that our human civilization actually being inside a Truman Show like enclosed system. Now that is fascinating. I can't wait to hear this, because we could be something that we're not. We don't know what we are really, and how it's been hidden from the public since 1956. You can find Mark's content on YouTube, books, Amazon, and the Netflix documentary Behind the Curve. And if you've got any questions for Mark, then please throw them at us in the chat. Hey, Mark, how's it going?
It's going pretty good, guys. And I am sure your chat room will have questions.
I hope so. Did you like my trailer there, Mark?
I did. It was very interesting. I've never been on a show like this. I was a little surprised when your guy contacted me. It's like, really?
Really? Well, this is Sean's show. I'm just like the window dressing. I'm the eye candy.
So I always start out by asking my guests, where in the world are they? In your case, where in the flat world are you?
I am just north of Seattle, on the west coast of the United States, on a little island just next to Canada called Whidbey, Whidbey.
Are you a fan of Nirvana?
Really? You're gonna make that sort of? I was here when that whole grunge thing started up, and I left shortly afterwards to live in Colorado for 20 years. But it was amazing because MTV just lived here. They just brought up so many trucks, and they were just here constantly. But and there was only like 6, 7 bands up here, but it made up the majority of the scene. So yeah.
I'll never forget that MTV Candle Night Vigil that Kurt Cobain did.
I was there.
You were there?
Oh yeah. I was there at the Seattle Center. I mean, it's not like I was crying in front of it. Was a little. I was an '80s kid, so the whole grunge thing was like, I kind of liked glam rock. I kind of dug that whole thing.
Was that a big Seattle thing then, Nirvana?
Oh, but it spread everywhere.
That was grunge was Seattle. It was the whole, dark plaid and rain and, nobody taking a shower for a week, that sort of stuff.
I think of Fraser Crane.
Oh, from the show.
Yeah, that's Seattle.
Yeah, that is Seattle. Yes, that's absolutely from the show Frasier.
We've done videos about the Kurt Cobain, the conspiracy with Courtney Love. Have you ever looked at any of that stuff?
Yeah, and we're never, of course, going to know the whole truth there. But, I mean, she's not exactly a pillar of goodness, let's put it that way. So, I don't know.
Her own private investigator that she hired to look into it, looked into it, and then did a documentary about her involvement because he was
I mean, a lot of rock stars have their own personal demons, so it's tough to say. And grunge is a depressing sort of genre. Come on, let's face it. It's not exactly poppy. It's not Madonna.
Yeah. Are you able to do a Kurt Cobain impression, Andrew?
Come as you are. Da-na-na. Like that?
I'm going to read you something, Mark. And let's get your thoughts on this.
I am, by the way, not looking at the chat room. I try to avoid anything over there because this is my first time on Restream.
It's great because you can broadcast on every platform and simultaneously on multiple YouTube channels.
Did not know that.
All right, so I've got this off the internet. I believe that it was Pythagoras who first proposed that the Earth was round. Sometime he based his idea on the fact that he showed the moon must be round by observing the shape of the Terminator. The line between the part of the moon part of the moon in the light and the part of the moon in the dark, as it moved through its orbital cycle. Pythagoras reasoned that if the moon was round, then the Earth must be round as well. After that, sometimes between 500 BC and 430 BC, a fellow called Anaxagoras determined the true cause of solar and lunar eclipses, and then the shape of the Earth's shadow on the moon during the lunar eclipse was also used as evidence that the Earth was round. Around 350 BC, the great Aristotle declared that the Earth was a sphere based on observations he made about which constellations you could see in the sky as you traveled further and further away from the equator.
Right.
And during the next 100 years or so, Aristarchus and Eratosthenes actually measured the size of the Earth. All right, let's get your response to that.
Oh, my response to that?
Yeah.
All that aside, why did just about every culture in the world draw the same thing when it came to the cosmology? In fact, you could Google this anytime you want. Type in ancient cosmologies. They all drew the same thing. They all drew a snow globe, which is, we're living on some. And by the way, we don't use the word round, or so we don't when we're describing globe, sphere, or ball. Because your dining room table is round, your dinner plate is round, but they all drew the same thing, which is, we're living on a flat stationary disc somewhere that's covered with some sort of barrier, and everything you see on the sky is moving, not us. And so why did just about every culture draw the same thing? I know you're going to say, oh, the Greeks, screw the Greeks. Right. Even they didn't know. They were talking about this when they didn't know about the shape of the continents. So it's like, yeah, great. I get your whole sticks and shadows argument, but it also works if the light source is very, very close and very, very small. How's that?
So
go on,
Sean. What is your view then of? Let's get that clear. So what is your view of how the Earth does look? You're in Seattle.
Exactly. What does the world look like?
Yeah, go on.
And normally I would have a background, but the green screen we tried earlier, for whatever reason, on this doesn't do very well. You are living in a building with walls and a floor and a ceiling, for lack of a better term, a planetarium, a terrarium, Hollywood soundstage. And for, again, most of the cultures, it kind of looks like a snow globe. So you were talking about well, aside from the building things, you're talking about a giant saltwater pond with islands in the middle of it, which are our continents, and the North Pole would be in the center, and there is no official South Pole. It's just surrounded. In fact, all the continents look pretty much the same, with the exception of Antarctica. Antarctica isn't this island continent that looks like Australia, roughly the same size. It is stretched out around the entire thing, and it's much, much larger. And nobody figured this out until about 1960, the United States and the Soviet Union, and they decided that civilization had come too far. So it's like, you know what? We're just not going to tell anybody until we have to. How do I know this? That's the question.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, mostly verifying ancient cosmologies. I looked into this back in 2014 because I hated it. Everybody that goes into flat Earth hates it. Oh God, they hate it so much, including me, because it's ridiculous. I've been into conspiracies. I have an opinion on every conspiracy you could think of. Some I like, some I hate, but there was one I absolutely would not look at, which was flat Earth. And in 2014, I was like, I'm getting older, so I was like, you know what? I'll take a look. Why not? Knock this thing out in a weekend, and hammered on 9 months later, right? 9 months later, in beginning of 2015, I gave up. I said, okay, I can't prove the globe in a court of law anymore. I'm just going to ask the internet, because the internet hive mind is very, very intelligent. And I said, tell me where I went wrong. And I made a series of videos called Flat Earth Clues, put them out there, put all my contact information out there, said, shoot it down, please. Let me get back to my life. And everyone was coming back to me with all sorts of amazing stuff. I had pilots and engineers and air traffic controllers and lots of people from the military. They're all saying, you know what? It's not that crazy. Here's why. And so, sorry, but as far as the 5 bullet points, I think I sent you the thing on it. I won't go into the details because I know we're limited on time. But real quick, long distance photography, first and foremost. That's what drags most people into this, which is you can see way farther than you normally could. So if the curvature is 8 inches per mile, eventually the boats are gone, and they're gone forever. You should never be able to see them again. But with HD technology, again, this is post-grunge music. With HD cameras, now you can zoom into the distance and you can pull these boats back into frame. Number one. Number two, vacuum versus gravity, meaning there's no way a pure vacuum of space would not rip off the atmosphere. And I could give you an example on that. Number three would be the moon temperature. which is the moon is generating a cold laser light, which just blows me away, meaning it's colder in the moonlight than the moon shade, up to 13 degrees Fahrenheit. Number 4 would be the eclipse shadow, kind of tying into Sean's question earlier, which is why is the eclipse shadow so small? If the moon is 2,000 miles wide, why is the blackout zone only 70 miles wide, which is roughly what we kind of say the moon is in size? And 5 would be the Van Allen radiation belt question, which is, okay, if the Van Allen radiation belts deadly, yes or no? If they are, then how the Americans get through them with no shielding whatsoever, and nobody died, nobody got radiation poisoning. There's still 4 of these guys limping around today. And if they are not deadly, then why did NASA make this wonderful program saying, oh yeah, we can't test our Mars program capsules because there's too much radiation and people would die? There you go. That's the 5 questions I threw at this astrophysicist out of Georgetown University, and he just folded. Nope, not doing this. Going home.
Right. All right. Well, that's all very technical, and perhaps some of the viewers are.
I know, I can make it easy for them.
Let me ask you some questions. Just get some basics here.
Okay.
What shape do you believe the Earth is then? And looking at it from space.
What space?
If it's flat, is it like a 45-inch single with UK on one side and Australia on the other?
Here, hang on.
If you've got questions, viewers, as well, please put them in the chat. And Ash is currently collating.
There you go.
So you believe that the Earth is like a snow dome, the shape of a snow dome?
Yep. That's about as easy as it gets right there. And by the way, when you said, it's floating in space, what space? Why does there have to be space?
Like pictures taken from space that show the shape of the Earth. But wouldn't pilots, as they reached the base of the snow dome, airplane pilots, wouldn't they have to seriously adjust their flight trajectory to go down the
not normal pilots, because you're talking about something that's very, very huge. This thing is so big, and I know it's a small little model, and I could bring out a bigger model, but you can look these up. The dome of this thing would be so high by comparison. I mean, even if it was, say, 3,000 miles high, well, commercial aircraft cap out at about 10 miles. Spy planes, if you believe them, cap out at about 20 miles. So they don't have to do anything. There's this wonderful video by Neil deGrasse Tyson, the world's most famous scientist, not knocking Brian Cox. He's number 2. Which is, he said that, there was a Red Bull jump that happened some years ago. And the Red Bull, they sent this guy up in a balloon, right? Put him in an astronaut suit and had him jump out at 130,000 feet. It's not that high. It's only 20 miles. Well, the pictures they took showed this massive, massive curvature. And Neil deGrasse Tyson comes out. He goes, yeah, it's scientifically dishonest. Now, he hates flat Earth, but he said this. He goes, you can't see the curve from 130,000 feet. So why is Red Bull doing this? And it's like, well, the images. I've talked to producers, and I asked them, why do you run those Red Bull images? And they go, well, it's good television. They're good images. They're dramatic. They show this massive curve. I go, but it's not real. We don't care. It gets viewers.
So one of our viewers, Ari, has pointed out that if it were the shape that you're proposing, that perhaps satellites wouldn't be able to work because they're programmed to orbit a spherical Earth.
Look up something called the High Altitude NASA Balloon Program. They've been doing this since the 50s. NASA is the world's largest producer and consumer of helium in the world. A lot of people don't know this. They can launch balloons, and it's not secret information. They can launch payloads of upwards of 4 tons, which is, and I'm not going to do the conversion for you guys, roughly 8,000 pounds. That's more than a couple cars. And they can do this with balloons, pennies on the dollar. And they can keep them up there. It's not like weather balloons where they just go up and they burst and they come back down. They can keep them up there for years, which also answers a big question of ours, which was, if you remember the movie Gravity with Sandra Bullock, the concept was, oh yeah, a satellite ran into another satellite, and then it just became this cascading effect, and the whole sky became this thing of jagged metal. It's like, that would have happened already. In fact, it would have happened many, many times. So why hasn't it? Why haven't we seen this cascading effect of satellites? It's because they're not rotating its ball. They're just freaking balloons, and you can see them go down. We got wonderful videos. They go down every once in a while, and they get picked up really quickly and quietly and taken away. No one wants to talk about it. It's brilliant.
I'm interested. I think on almost a philosophical level, the first thing you said when I asked why you believe the Earth is flat was the ancient cosmologists. I think you said.
Yeah.
Why give them more weight and credence than modern scientists with all the science and they didn't even have electricity. But those ancient cosmologists, they can't have been that smart.
Well, no, but at the same time, everyone was on the same page. Meaning, you have governments that weren't communicating. Back in the day when it was just horses and ships, and yet they were all seeing and drawing the exact same things. That was that when I was looking at that, I was going, okay, why is everybody looking at this the exact same way? It's like, oh, because they were all ignorant. They couldn't read and write, and it was like they were just observing the stars, going over in the sky. And yet, if you watch a time lapse video, not much has changed since then. If you watch a time lapse, type in like Star Trails time lapse. When you watch that, you can't break out of the illusion. When you're watching that, it's like, because of science tells you that it's like, oh, we're moving, not the stars. But when you watch it, it's the stars that are moving. So why isn't the easiest answer the best answer in this case? Why aren't the stars moving? Why? It's like, because NASA told us so. It's like, oh, you mean the Americans? And by the way, I have to bring this up because I know you guys are out in England, right?
Yeah.
You're in England. So Americans believe absolutely, because it's a patriotic duty, that we went to the moon and we were the only ones. We planted the flag. Go, rah, rah. We're the best. Why did you guys believe it? And every time I ask this, the knee-jerk response is almost inevitably the same, which is, oh, because it was on television. Because the Americans put it on television and go, because we don't lie about anything ever. Especially our governments. We never lie. Americans, oh God, we're so honest. Come on, you don't believe that. And by the way, that also, we left in 1972. Why didn't anybody go back? And I have to give the British credit. I have to give the UK credit, because all these other countries got into a space program, right? There's a Japan space program, and Russian and the European Union stuff. England never got into it. Why not? Because they were smart. That's why. Remember. Don't forget the James Bond film where they made fun of it, where Sean Connery's running across the fake moon set. It was brilliant, and the astronauts couldn't catch him because they were still in character. They were running in slow motion. Awesome.
But aren't they sort of making fun of you, Mark, with those when you see satirical sort of things in TV shows and movies and things? They're making the joke is that some people really believe this was faked.
Sometimes it's a joke, and sometimes I think they're doing a wink to the camera. Going all the way back to the wonderful documentary by Stanley Kubrick, yes. Which was about Stanley Kubrick, called Room 237. Where he supposedly built into The Shining the entire his involvement in the American fake moon program, which is why not? And by the way, I don't blame him. Every director would have gone for it. If the government comes to you with a blank check and says, oh yeah, we'll give you unlimited money to do this, but you can't tell anybody, who wouldn't go for that?
So if the Earth is flat, why do we say Australians are down under?
That's just conditioning. That's straight up conditioning. In fact, we have a hard time. Our community has a hard time breaking out of that, because there's so many sayings, especially the down under and down here and down there. Even in America, when we're driving from Seattle to California, oh yeah, we're going to drive down to California. So, and people forget, it's like, even if it was a globe, why is this the top and Australia's the bottom? But that's a whole other thing. It's like,
could you demonstrate on your object where Australia is?
Oh, it's still there. I don't know if you can see it.
Whereabouts is Australia on that?
It's right down. You can see it. It's off to the...
And it's all just flat, and then the dome at the top is like the atmosphere, is it?
Yeah. Which goes into a whole nother thing, which is, why is our atmosphere still here? I have to get this argument out, because it's the one I love more than long distance photography.
Well, can you answer that? And also, why, when you get to the end of the sphere, don't you walk off the edge?
Oh, because you can't. There's nothing to walk off of. I mean, no matter where you go in this model, and again, you can look this up, and I don't know if you want to do screenshots right now. But no matter where you go in this model, you're going to run into ice and snow, and more ice and more snow. No matter which direction you have.
And what would happen if you did get to the edge? Just a wall?
Well, that's just it. One of the big misconception is that Antarctica is the end of the world. No, it's the beginning of the end. Meaning the Antarctic coastline isn't the edge. It's not like the Game of Thrones, this big ice wall. Although it is a very high ice wall that comes off the ocean. It goes in thousands and thousands of miles. That's the big catch. The Americans were looking for this thing for the better part of 30 years. They sent down the youngest admiral in the history of the Navy, Admiral Byrd. And he flew around in planes for 30 years looking for this damn thing. And then when he found it, and of course they're never going to tell you that he found it, then they put in the Antarctic Treaty, the only unbroken treaty in the history of treaties that says that no corporation can go down there and set up shop ever for the end of time. It's not even up for review.
What do you think is there? A wall?
Oh yeah, sure. Why not? Some sort of barrier. But remember, it would be thousands of miles inland from the beach. And so the Antarctic Treaty says that you can't go down there. I mean, yeah, you can go down there and spend 15,000 pounds and get your pictures taken with penguins and crap like that. But eventually, you're not going to be able to run amok. And that made so much sense to me because this world is based on greed and money and power. And yet, in fact, if you want to start fracking in my backyard next week, you could make that happen if you're an oil and gas company. But those same companies aren't even allowed to talk about Antarctica. When have you ever seen that? Ever? But why does British Petroleum not go down to Antarctica? They can't.
So the way you described it, then it's kind of like the limits of the boundaries of a video game. So do you believe that we're in some kind of simulation?
Yep. Yeah, I do. But most of the time,
what is your definition of a simulation?
My definition of simulation, well, I was in the video game industry for years. I mean, I used to play video games for a living. I was a video game producer, and they're all striving to be the same thing, which is a virtual reality that the player cannot break out of. Once you are immersed in it, there's no way to get out because you weren't the access to it, your memory of it was blocked. So, and by the way, when I got into this whole flat Earth model, I'd love to talk about simulations, but most people don't get it. Meaning, look, it's been 20 years since the Matrix, and people still don't understand the concept of the Matrix. But all the entertainment companies are trying to build in some sort of virtual reality. We've seen it in like Ready Player One and Free Guy and stuff like that. But it's almost impossible to do because you can't hook up the other senses. But we can build visually amazing worlds right now. I mean, you've seen them out there. The latest GTA, which I don't play because of the whole crime aspect, is a beautiful game. And we can do some wonderful, wonderful stuff. And yes, if it is flat and it is enclosed, it's probably virtual. No question. The double slit experiment is a big tell of that.
I don't think people in general have much of a problem with simulation theory. I think Elon Musk said it. It's quite mainstream, isn't it? This idea that it's actually very, very likely we live in a simulation. I think what people find hard is this flat world idea, because so many people in our simulation, if we are in a simulation, would have to be lying for that to be true.
Well, or NPCs, which is the concept behind Free Guy. But yeah, and by the way, a lot of people, again, what you just said, it's a paradox. Lots of people can understand now the virtual realities, but what people forget is video games are based on completely flat models, meaning there are no curves in video games. You just don't know any better because, it's like, you can't see the curve. And it's also it's not even a snow globe. It's boxed off. The skybox system is what they do with the ceiling. Like everything has right angles because computers can't understand circles. They hate them. They only deal with right angles, which is why pixels are perfectly square. So it's this weird paradox, in video games, like for example, we have to put in the distance. We have to put in haze in the distance, fake atmosphere. So you can't see too far, which also ties into what we're dealing with our real world. Well, our real world, which is you can't see too far because the atmosphere thickness. Lots of people will say, and I'm ignoring the chat, which is, why can't you see Japan from California? Why can't you see Europe from New York? And why can't you see Mount Everest from everywhere? Well, it's because you're not breathing in nothing. What we're breathing in right here is a gas. It's a couple gases. It's mostly nitrogen, a little bit of oxygen, and some trace gases. And that gets thickness, gains thickness over time. No different than water. Why, when you dive, if you've ever dived with anybody, at 200 feet down, you can't see the sun, even on a bright summer day. Same thing with the atmosphere.
So in the chat, they're asking about your religious beliefs, which ties into my next question, which is, if we are in a simulation, who designed it? and what is the purpose of it? I mean, what are we?
Okay. No, it's a good one, and I'm glad you guys got to that, which is who built it and why. It's probably the most important question. Most people get around the flat part, which is it can only be one of two answers. One is an older and more powerful civilization than ourselves, obviously, kind of like the movie Contact, or the divine. And at that point, you're kind of splitting hairs because one man's advanced tech is another man's deity. So do I think God is a programmer? Yeah, I do. Absolutely. We didn't invent programming. And some of the design features of this place are amazing. Do I believe in God? Yes, I do. Was I raised in a born-again evangelical Christian home? Yeah, I was. But I fell away from that when I got into tech for obvious reasons. And then got pulled kind of back, not back into the church, but back into spirituality when I got into this. Because if it was built, if it was created like this, then it was created by someone. And this just screams intelligent design. And science doesn't want to go there, which, it's the opposite of what science says. Science says you're on a little tiny spinning ball covered in a little bit of water and smoke flying through an impossible universe. And you're just left over from the Big Bang. And we say, no, it's probably the easier option, which is this. And it's 99.99% of the people believe the illusion, like the Matrix or the Truman Show or one of those things. And that's what you go with. I mean, and by the way, who's to say there is space? Why can't it just be this sitting on somebody's desk? Who's to say there isn't 7 billion little tiny things living in that thing right now? And one more thing, the planetarium argument, which is when you go into a planetarium, and I know that kind of dates me, you are looking at a projection on a screen. All this, does the moon look spherical? Yes. Can you land on it? No. Why not? Because it's just an image on the ceiling. And if you brought somebody in from, I don't know, an old school Amish community that's never seen tech in their life, that would just blow their minds, right? It's like, holy smokes. What is wrong with it? Why does the sky look like this? It's like, no, it's an illusion.
Mark, here's my issue with this. It feels like there are two separate theories. One is simulation theory and one is flat Earth theory. Sure. And a lot of your arguments point to simulation theory, which I think a lot of people are right behind, that it could be real, that we could be just something on someone's desk. I think a lot of people do agree with that. But flat Earth theory seems to suggest, just by its name, that we're not in a simulation, which a lot of people think as well. Okay, we're not, but the Earth is flat. Right. And a lot of your, for example, the Van Allen belt trap, right? And you said this scientist just ran away. Well, I looked up literally for about 30 seconds before coming on here. I said, what's the Van Allen belt trap? I don't know what that is. It's a bit of radiation that if you go through, it can be dangerous, right? But there are huge gaps that you can go through that aren't as strong radiation. There are parts of it. And that took me 10 seconds. Now, who do we believe? You're right. I'm just believing that information, right? I understand that that's what you're probably thinking. But at the end of the day, as human beings, I suppose on the one hand, we have to be vigilant against, government could be lying to us and that kind of thing. But on the other hand, surely we go with the scientists of today. I mean, how sure are you, Mark, out of 100, how sure are you of flat Earth theory?
Oh, 99.999%. I used to be only like 95% when I started this thing. But the reinforcement I got from the subject matter experts, which I interviewed on my channel, and they came to me unsolicited, they all said the same thing. And
but it's dangerous. 99.999% about anything is very dangerous, isn't it? That's, Dunning-Kruger levels. That's like, being the more sure you are suggests you want to believe it.
No. Come on, 0.0001%. Of course, anyone can be wrong on just about anything.
I mean, it's too sure. I mean, you're too.
Oh
certain.
No! I don't think it's dangerous. I absolutely believe this. Believe this. No question. And by the way, when it comes to, I know when you said that people, the blurring of the lines, the only problem we have nowadays is virtual reality, because we've done it in pop culture for a number of years now, has become a very accepted thing because we've been beating people over the heads with it since the late 90s, right? Well, flat Earth predates that by a long, long way. Just because we're now talking about it in different terms doesn't make it any less, valid. It just means that we now have different terms to describe it. And so, yes, I absolutely love to say, if it's virtual, it probably looks like this, because in our virtual worlds, the ones we create, this is what we build. Literally this, only it's squared off at the edges. It's no different.
So if
Sean?
we're in a simulation
Yes.
and the Matrix gave us a heads up on that,
Yeah.
is Keanu Reeves in on it? And why is the designer a bit like, a serial killer who's not been caught and wants to throw a clue out there to try and
the
reveal
why.
what the truth is?
I believe there's something else sorry, again, I don't know how much time we have.
10
There's
minutes.
I believe there's another layer to this, which is, let's get to the why real fast, because a lot of people will ask, okay, what's outside of this? If this is where we live, then what's outside of this? What are they doing? Is the person, is the creator lurking about? Is it a big joke, or is it more of a novelty thing? Meaning, I believe that if this world is 99.9% conflict, which it is, it doesn't matter how beautiful, how powerful, how talented, how rich you are, you always have something to complain about. Always. No one's ever completely satisfied. Even monks sitting on a Tibetan mountaintop still have to deal with mortality. You can't escape it. If that's the case, then what is outside of here is an unlimited universe. And I think it is cyclical. I think the universe runs off of novelty. And which is why we always ask constantly, hey, what's new? What's new? What's new? I mean, how many people are going crazy because they're running out of things to watch on Netflix, for example? I'm watching stuff I wouldn't have touched 5 years ago.
Toss a coin to The Witcher. Are you watching The Witcher?
I've watched. Oh, please, I blew past that. I'm watching. I'm watching even stuff. It's like, okay, you watch The Witcher. Here's 5 other recommended shows. Well, okay, fine. I'll just watch those. But I do believe that what's outside of it is unlimited. Now, if you want to call it heaven or nirvana or Shambhala or whatever it is, fine. But I think that eventually what happens is you run out of novelty and you have to refresh. You have to gain perspective. So you come to a place like this. And it's limited lifespan, all sorts of different sufferings. Line from the Matrix. Human beings seem to define the reality through misery and suffering, which is true. And then you go back.
Yeah. I just think, like I said, I think if it's simulation theory, then it doesn't look like anything. It's just a computer. It doesn't look like a
Don't be so sure, because remember, even when we build stuff, it doesn't matter how good a computer you are or how big the computer system is. You have to define the borders. You have to define the boundaries. Now, yes, you're right in the way that the whole wave particle thing. Whereas if you're in a computer simulation, if a tree falls in the forest and you aren't there to see it, does it still make a sound? Well, now we know with computer simulations, no, because it hasn't been rendered yet. There is no tree. It's just over there in blank code. It hasn't been drawn. There is no freaking tree.
Yeah.
But
it's a nice thought.
But does it exist as a border? Yes. GTA exists as a world. It has boundaries. Fortnite has boundaries. Everything has boundaries. Eventually, you have to build the boundaries in.
A viewer hang tight, wants to know if aliens are real. And earlier on, you mentioned about ancient civilizations.
Yes.
Do you think that there was a fusion of alien DNA with the ancient civilizations? If you do believe aliens are real?
Oh boy, I'll see if I can abbreviate this one. Do I believe that aliens are real? Yes, but I don't think do I think they're from Mars and Jupiter? No, I do not. British guy told me years and years ago, he goes, you want to see some weird stuff? Grab some night vision binoculars, start looking up at the sky. I did, way before flat Earth. And it's like the sky is crawling with stuff. Do I think they are from Mars and Jupiter and Venus? No, I do not. I think they're just older versions of us. We are not the first people. You guys know this. We're not the first people to rent this apartment, not by a long shot. I mean, the Bosnian pyramids, the real pyramids, Puma Punku, the sunken cities off Japan and India. There's all sorts of remnants of previous civilizations. Our civilization only goes back unbroken maybe 5,000 years. And there's stuff that's way, way older than that. So, but whoever's flying around up there, I think there's rules. If you want to look up some really cool stuff to your person over there that was asking about that, the greatest UFO sighting in history, our history, wasn't Roswell or 1899 Aurora, Texas, or any of that crap. It was 1561 Germany. Look up the 1561 Nuremberg event. It is brilliant. On a beautiful, clear day, 2 huge armadas come over the city and just start hammering at each other for a full hour. Not a cloud in the sky. And then a third faction comes in and scatters them. Big, giant black ship. They even talked about ancient aliens. They left out the black ship. And It's the coolest thing ever. And there weren't any photographs, but they drew the whole thing. They had a full hour to draw it. So there was wood carvings. They're like, oh, this is great. Eating their toast and Schnitzenglöben for breakfast, watching the whole thing. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So do I think they're here? Yes. Do I think they get to interact with us on a regular basis? No. Call it the Prime Directive out of Star Trek, which is you can't just land in the middle of Paris and start signing autographs and taking selfies. It would screw everything up. I think there's rules. I think there's protocols in place.
Andrew?
Yeah. I don't know. It's that thing, isn't it, with the conspiracy theorists? It's like you have to to believe one, you have to often believe a whole network of them. So it's also there's UFOs and there's this and there's that. Well, and like I said, it's that certainty. But you did say I didn't know this about you, but that you grew up in a very devout religious family, and surely it's possible, and I know it must be frustrating for you to hear this, I understand that, but it must be possible that you might be replacing those urges with other desires to look for the extraterrestrial or the extreme.
No. I'm not offended. You can say anything you want to me. I've had way worse since from the last 6 years, which is for me. I love the idea of an objective truth, but we live in a world, as you guys know from your stuff, we live in a world of layers and layers and layers of deceptions. People lie about stuff all the damn time. And with organizations, I mean, come on, we know there's conspiracies, where 3 or more people conspire to do stuff in let's see, business and politics and sports and entertainment, and even journalism and science. It happens all the time. So once you can get your head around that I grew up again very, very sheltered. So when I saw JFK in the theater for the first time in the early 90s, I was like blown away. I was like, wait, people in authority lie about stuff? I had no idea. And so now, I've looked into enough things. It's like, people will lie to protect their interests. So would they lie about all sorts of things? And would they lie about the shape of the world? Of course they would. And that's, by the way, that's one of the things that sold me on this. It's like, would I lie if I found out in 1960, if I was the government or whatever group you want to call them, the Illuminati or whoever it is, would I lie about this? Yeah, you bet I would. But the public wasn't even remotely ready in 1960. Are they more ready now? Yeah, kind of. I mean, we've given them enough hints, but 1960, no. So I agree. My qualification for a conspiracy is, would I improve on it, and would I say that the ends justified the means, no matter what the means were? And if I agree with it, that's it. It's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Totally would do it.
We only have time for one more question. It's come from Hugh Janus.
Yeah.
Do you believe, Mark, in time travel?
That's a tough one, because I love time travel. I love the concept of time travel. I fantasize about time travel. Any time travel movie that comes out, I will watch it. But do I think it's happened here with the whole Mandela effect thing? Maybe, because time travel is tricky. Any other movie will tell you, if you're talking about fragmenting parallel lines, or if you're talking about a singularity where it just keeps changing, the same timeline. I don't know. I don't believe we have the ability now, even though Nazi Germany was kind of toying with the idea towards the end of the war. That was the myth. But I don't think, if we are doing it, well, let's put it this way. If we pulled it off, you're never going to know. Because either it goes off into a completely separate timeline, which isn't tied to you, or it happens and changes your life in a way you're not going to know in the first place.
Do you think something like Doctor Who's TARDIS would be practical?
Oh, I love Doctor Who's TARDIS. I love that show. And no offense to Jodie Whittaker, she should have never ever been cast for the last couple seasons. It wasn't her fault, because it was the writing. Honestly, I would have chosen Tom Ellis. Is that right? The guy that played Lucifer.
It was Tom Baker, wasn't there? Wasn't he one of them?
I don't know.
Tom Ellis. You might want to look at. He played Lucifer in the United States series Lucifer, about the devil helping Los Angeles Police Department, which is so weird. But no, I love the TARDIS. I love the concept, and I love the idea. If anyone sees a TARDIS flying around, please let me know. I'd love to. I'd love to talk to him.
Who asked that question, Sean? Mr. Janus.
I asked about time travel. I threw in about the TARDIS.
Oh, you threw in the TARDIS?
So
I was in love with it ever since Christopher Eccleston broke into the new series. I remember watching that on BBC America. I was going, wow. I never watched any of the early ones. and just fell in love with it.
Mark, we've run out of time. A huge thank you for coming on and being such a good sport with all these questions.
Oh yeah.
Could you please tell the viewers where they can find you and follow you and
Yeah. It's easy because I hate social media. So just type in Flat Earth Mark into YouTube. That's how you find me. My channel's on there. It's just my name, Mark Sargent. And there's a YouTube documentary, a Netflix documentary called Behind the Curve, which it's a fair look at what we did a couple of years ago, and a couple books on Amazon, and you'll find me. It's not hard. I mean, all my information's out there. It's how you guys get a hold of me.
Cool.
All
Thanks,
right,
Mark.
you have a good rest of your evening in Washington, I think you said, and
I will
blast out some Nirvana.
Thanks.
Watch some Frasier.
Oh, some Frasier. Kelsey, by the way, Kelsey's one of ours. I talked to him a couple of years ago.
Build a TARDIS.
He's a flat earther.
Yeah.
Kelsey Grammer.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, he's an alcoholic, wasn't he?
What's that got to do with it?
A lot.
Hey, no. Oh, by the way, and I sent this to you. Last thing, Novak's one of ours.
Again, not surprised.
All right.
I'm just kidding, Mark. Have a good one.